Hello, Zane.
Hello, Mohit.
How are you doing, my friend? You're okay?
I'm good. How are you? How are you, sir? You well?
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Thank you for being here, Zane. We're really looking forward to your webinar. There are almost 100 people here today, and they're super excited, to listen to you and to, your experiences, your adventures, your anecdotes, so many things. And I've had a glimpse at your presentation, and it's absolutely fabulous. So friends, if you can all hear me well, can you just put yes in the chat? And if you can hear Zane as well properly, if you can just put yes, then I know that we are audible, and we're good to go. Iqbal, welcome Iqbal, welcome Nanita, welcome Arun, Rajiv, welcome Pramodji, welcome Vivek, welcome Arun. Good. Brian, good to see you, my friend. Rahul, welcome Mahendraji, Beatrice, Pari. Great to see you, all my friends. That's lovely. And it is, okay, so you all can hear me well. Okay, I'm going to quickly introduce Zane to you and also tell you a bit about myself, especially to those people who don't know me. So about Zane. So having had a lifelong passion and focus on the environment and cultures and their interaction with tourism, Zane has spent his life in the adventure tourism, ecotourism, and education spaces. Zane's career has taken him to many locations and has had him involved in a variety of tourism, education, and community enterprise projects in Australia, Italy, Turkey, Spain, Portugal, China, Philippines, Malaysia, USA, Hawaii, UAE, Hong Kong, Sri Lanka, Chile, and Scotland. My God, that's many countries. He has a sustainable tourism and education consultancy and is currently focused on community-led development initiatives in the region where he lives, the west coast of New Zealand, South Island. He has Masters in Science, Entrepreneurial Leadership from Edinburgh, Napier University, Scotland. He's also he's an executive committee member of Asian Ecotourism Network. And so that was about Zane. And there's a lot more that he's going to talk about. And a bit about me. I'm Mohit Agarwal. I'm an experiential ecotourism specialist with a deep love for nature. I help people travel to some wonderful places in Asia. I'm on the board of Asian Ecotourism Network, and I've been trained and certified by GSTC in sustainable tourism. I'm the founder of Asian Adventures, a 27-year-old travel outfit. It is the largest bird watching tour company in India. I'm also the founder of NatiNetta, a value email marketing company that is now working towards strengthening communication for wildlife outfits. These companies are on a large mission to help Asian elephants with the corridors, free the Himalayas of plastic waste, help small wildlife angels, and conserve the ancient Himalayan shrines. So that was a bit about me, and over to you, Zane.
You can go ahead and put your message. Great introduction, thank you. So, thanks everyone for joining us today, tonight, this morning, from whatever time zone you happen to be in. Here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, it's just after 7 p.m. In the evening, so it's the evening for us. Just had a lovely dinner and sitting down to present this webinar for you folk. And so what I would like to do is tell you some stories, or sort of a key thread of a story. I've called it Anecdotes from Aotearoa, New Zealand. So I'd like to tell you this story. You can see this image here is a lovely old historical photograph or image of Aotearoa, New Zealand. And some of you people listening and watching tonight may have been here. If so, great. And for you other folk that haven't, one day, maybe in the future, you get a chance to come. So the story that I want to tell tonight is to talk about, just through a series of anecdotes, I'd like to look at some lessons that we've learned through hardship, hard times, and creativity under intense pressure. that our tourism regions and operators have had over the COVID period here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I know, very conscious of the fact that everyone listening and watching tonight has had their own experiences with the COVID pandemic, and many of you are still living in some real intense scenarios here. So I'll update you on what's happening within our place. So I'd like to get some context onto this. So what is Aotearoa? Aotearoa is the Maori name for New Zealand. Okay, so the Maori are the Polynesian peoples that live in the first peoples of Aotearoa, New Zealand. It's also commonly translated as the land of the long white cloud. So the land of the long white cloud, we have many mountains and we have many weather patterns in many different areas, but the South Island of New Zealand has a long mountain range that runs down the length of it, and often there'll be this cloud that will be along the edge of the mountains, and hence it got its name, Aotearoa, the land of the long white cloud. You can see in this slide as well, there's an image of a modern Maori man down here. He's actually a politician here in New Zealand, a current MP, Member of Parliament. So it's a very, very young country. So I want to show you a video right now to showcase how young this nation is as a physical and geographical location.
Legend says this land was hauled from the ocean like a giant fish. And then it waited. In fact, these islands waited until every other country had been discovered before any human ever set foot here. Welcome to the youngest country on earth.
Yeah, fantastic. So that video really showcases for us here in New Zealand that the place is very, very young, that we as people here are very, very young. So when we talk about some history, in pre-human times here in Aotearoa, New Zealand was only 1,000 years ago. Pre-human, only 1,000 years ago. For many of you that are watching tonight or today, this morning, or whatever your time zone is, your cultures are many, many thousands of years old, deeply rooted in your religion and your cultures, your languages, your cuisine. Our culture in Aotearoa, New Zealand started with the Polynesian arrival about 850 to 900 years ago. And then so they had the landscape to themselves for a few hundred years before the Europeans arrived. And then, of course, the Europeans populated New Zealand, and now many nations have come to this place and populated. It is a very multicultural melting pot of humanity here. But before anyone arrived, the landscape was obviously covered in forests, mountains, rivers, lakes, these beautiful scenes. And it was terrestrial New Zealand was a land of birds, bats, and lizards. And once the settlement occurred, thus the impacts upon the birds and other species started to happen on great levels. These impacts had a huge effect. Some of the largest birds on the planet actually lived here. These two in the image are the moa and the haast eagle. You'll see the haast eagle coming down, sweeping upon the moa, has a wingspan of about 3.5 meters. It's now extinct. These moa, there were a number of different species. They were flightless birds, large like an emu or an ostrich, and these birds here would have been 2.5 or 3 meters tall. So you can imagine when people arrived here, they were a very, because they couldn't fly away, they were a very easy source of food and a very good source of food. There's many other species have become extinct, sadly, and they're too numerous to name. They're not just birds. There's fish species, lizard species. We didn't have any predators here. There's no big cats that are natives. There's no large creatures that were predating apart from the birds. So it was alive. There was a lot of life here. The New Zealand plants and animals evolved over millions of years on their own. There was no human here. There were no mammal predators. They were very vulnerable when people and other predators arrived. And like I mentioned, many of the birds here couldn't fly. They had no one or nothing to run from, so therefore they didn't need to. And our most famous of the flightless birds, you may know, is the kiwi. And we identify, the people of New Zealand, we identify as Kiwis. We think about ourselves as Kiwi. We talk to each other about it. We'll talk about other Kiwis, meaning other people on this landscape. And the Kiwi bird itself is very, very rare. And most Kiwis, the people, have never seen a Kiwi in its native habitat, in its native wild habitat. Many New Zealanders have only ever seen these things in zoos. Where we live, we're really fortunate to live in a place where we can hear them. And if we wanted to see them, it's still very, 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 very difficult, nearly impossible. So they've managed to survive. We've got a lot of introduced plants and a lot of introduced animals here in New Zealand. So there's over 30,000 exotic plant species that have been brought in with human habitation, and some have become uncontrollable as weeds. And in some areas, they've started to replace native plants, and that's become very problematic. The introduced animals, like I mentioned before, there were no predators for the creatures, so the introduced animals in a lot of ways became the predators, and these creatures had no way of defending themselves. We've brought mammals here, so we've got rats, cats, stoats, and ferrets have become hugely problematic for our native fauna, and 40 out of the 91 native land birds have now become extinct. Many more in danger there. Animals such as deer, goats, and possums also live in the forest, and they are damaging the habitats of our native bird species. Despite these impacts, though, we've still got many, many beautiful natural features here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, that we need to protect, and we're very focused on that. Because we're still impacting the environment. We understand as humans and what we do and how we live is impacting our environment that we live in enormously. So I want to talk a little bit about the conservation movement here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I think it's a really important story. We understand that we have had a huge impact, and we also understand that without fixing the problems that we have created, we're going to be in a heck of a lot more trouble than we are at the moment. So New Zealand is not absolutely perfect. You know, we live here and we recreate, we play. We're a very fun culture, but we also are realizing more and more that we have had a very, very negative impact on the environment that we are here living in, and we need to do something about it. We're very fortunate to have a proactive government here, and many years ago the Department of Conservation was created, and that is a government department responsible for New Zealand's protected areas. These include the national parks, the forest parks, conservation parks, as well as a wide range of reserves and other land. The land they administer actually makes up about 1/3 of the total landscape of Aotearoa, New Zealand. And so you can see in this slide on the right hand side, and you can see the areas that are predominantly coloured are the Department of Conservation managed areas. Now, if you look on the southern island here, the bottom island, on the left-hand side of it, that is the west coast of the South Island, and that is where I live. And that's where I'm beaming in to you from now. And if I look out my window at the back of my house, I have a forest on these beautiful hills, and some of the trees on that forest are 1,000 years old. And it's incredibly beautiful. And then to my right in front of my house, I have the ocean. And in the ocean, we have dolphins, we have seals, we have penguins. And sometimes the penguins are nesting not far from my house. All of these things, the trees, the penguins, the dolphins, they're all at risk because of us, these humans that are living on this landscape. So with this understanding in mind, our Department of Conservation and other agencies have developed what's called Te Mana Aotearoa, which is the New Zealand Biodiversity Strategy. Okay, we're fortunate to be reasonably intelligent, articulate and educated human beings down here. And we've, you know, with this knowledge that and this passion that we have to actually work with our environment and make things better, and the government being on board with some money and budgets, we've managed to create this and build this strategic framework for the protection, restoration and sustainable use of biodiversity, particularly the indigenous biodiversity, our endemic species, of which we have thousands of endemic species. Okay, so this strategy is from 2020, last year, to 2050. And some of the terminology here is important, the vocabulary that our government is using. Like here, and I've put in the highlights, the grey highlights. If we all work together, we can make the biggest possible difference for biodiversity. Collaboration and partnerships are a key focus in Te Mana Aotearoa. So it's all about collaboration. It's all about the people. Really important. Teamwork. But it's national teamwork. So this report provides a stock take of the biodiversity crisis that we have here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. It's describing the state trends and pressures on our indigenous biodiversity across the marine, freshwater and land terrestrial domains. And it also identifies gaps that are preventing us from forming a complete picture of what biodiversity is here. And some inadequacies that the way we're managing our biodiversity and measuring our biodiversity in New Zealand. Some of the recent stories that we've had in the last few weeks is new species being discovered. You know, we've got a lot of people out there that have new eyes for the environment. The COVID lockdown, and people are spending a lot of time in their backyards and in their back country. And now we're having more people starting to think about what creatures are there. And there's more photographs and more evidence being managed going through this Department of Conservation. And as a result, new species are being discovered, which is amazing. So, you know, here's a classic heading, why we need to protect it. You know, native biodiversity here in Aotearoa, it's rich, it's unique. Many of our plants, birds, bats and insects, fungi, reptiles and fish, they aren't found anywhere else in the world. And we're lucky enough to have ancient rainforests, tussock grasslands and braided rivers right here on our doorstep. As I've described to you what life is like around this little town where I live. It's all right here on our doorsteps. So many of us, we feel a really strong connection to our native plants and wildlife, as I just described. Our nature, it's giving us enjoyment when we're outdoors. It supports our economy and it's part of our culture and way of life. And it's the way that many people around the world picture New Zealanders when they think about this place. They think about the culture of friendly, smiling people in the outdoors, having a good time. And that is what life's like for a lot of us. Many of us, though, they don't. There's still lots of people that stay inside their houses and don't go out to play in the outdoors. But that doesn't mean to say that they don't want it to be protected. So we've got a responsibility here to safeguard the biodiversity for the future generations, and a lot of people are buying into that more and more. So one of the key things with this biodiversity strategy is that and I've put it in highlights again here, the overall picture in Aotearoa is one of continued depletion in the face of the main pressures. So continued depletion. We have changed the use of our land and our sea. We have invasive species. We have pollution. Yes, we absolutely have pollution here. Daily problem for us. Harvesting and extraction. Extractive industries like mining for minerals and so on can be damaging to the environment, and the rapidly increasing threat from climate change. We have glacier tourism in New Zealand, and that's rapidly declining because the glaciers are getting smaller. So the public's heavily involved in conservation. And here's a snapshot of just a few local organisations, and you can see the images that I've presented here. Urban Wildlife Trust, Nainai Nature Trust, Forest and Bird, Nature School New Zealand, Kia Conservation Trust. There's a penguin trust there. A lot of these organisations are community groups. They can be villages, towns and schools. They're very commonly independently funded trusts, and they're funded through charities and fundraising and communities, as well as companies acting under their own steam with corporate social responsibility, or CSR. And they're a hugely important part of the conservation movement in New Zealand, because the government can't do it on their own. So now I want to switch the gear a little bit and talk about ecotourism. What does it look like here in New Zealand, or more to the point, what did it look like prior to COVID? What did it look like? Okay, so we'll look at a few images. Here we've got some penguins. A lot of people watching birds here in New Zealand. Bird watching, penguins are great. Whale watching is really important. Hiking, which we call tramping. It's our sort of our term for it. In the forest, or hiking in the wilderness is a greatly important ecotourism pastime. Eco lodges, the accommodation sector, has really become mainstream with ecotourism. But because tourism in New Zealand has been mainly built around the outdoors, there's been a huge adventurous side to it as well. So New Zealand's well known as an adventure tourism capital, and we can't forget the adventure tourism products at all when we talk about ecotourism. For instance, this is where bungee jumping was invented. This is where jet boating was invented. We have a lot of activities that are utilising the natural wilderness for the adventurous product, the adventurous tourism product. So people are going into these beautiful places and going rafting, jet boating and so on. And the storylines have become hugely important for the tourism operators. The storylines that they are telling to their customers and interpreting to their customers are the stories of our culture, of the people, of the Maori people here, of the Europeans and all the other people that have arrived, the stories of the birds, the bats and beyond, and the stories of the mammals that we do have, the dolphins and so on. So importantly, the point I'm making here is that eco and adventure tourism are very strongly linked, and are often, with ecotourism product, just one and the same. And then for us, just like everyone else, all of you guys that are here watching tonight, what had happened, we got a global pandemic, and it's changed everything. And, we've got a new vocabulary like coronavirus, COVID, social distancing, wearing masks, which I was just telling, I've got one here, but I haven't worn a mask, like this is, I'm going to show you what I look like with a mask on. That's me wearing a mask, yeah. I have not had to wear that mask in the public for 1 year. 1 year. And I know some of you guys there now will be thinking, wow, I was wearing it 15 minutes ago. I've been wearing my mask for 18 months or nearly. So we're very fortunate to live where we do. We closed our borders on March the 19th, 2020, which was actually my birthday, and it ended the tourism industry as we knew it, much like where you're all living and you're experiencing the same things. Tourism finished. However, we're lucky because we're an island nation. We could shut those borders quite easily and stop everyone coming. And of course, we didn't stop people leaving because we had lots of international tourists trapped here. They all needed to get home. So our borders are still closed to 99.9% of the world. We've got people returning to New Zealand, people that our expatriates who are living offshore, and we've got other things happening that we require internationals to come here for. But as a tourism destination, it is no entry. It is closed, as you'll see from this slide. Our Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, she's become very famous around the world out of this. She was very strong in shutting our borders very, very early on. But what that meant, this one here, what happened? We were all faced with this big empty space. We didn't know what we were going to do in the tourism industry, and as well as that for all other industries. So the government rolled out after a little while, a few weeks, a month, maybe more, I can't remember exactly how long it took, they rolled out what they called a $12.1 billion support package. And it included a range of these things that I've got on the slide here. There was $235 million to spend immediately on health, including increasing testing, contact tracing. For coronavirus, there was $255 million went into future health needs and projecting forward what we might need. For flu vaccines and face masks and other protective measures like PPE, $5.1 billion went into, this is the biggest amount, went into wage subsidies for affected businesses in all sectors and regions available from the day back then last year. The wage subsidies were fundamentally important to the survival of many, many different businesses, especially in the tourism sector, because there were no more tourists. So the government paid the wages. And I know a lot of you are from countries that may have not had any support like this, and you may shake your head and say, oh my goodness, I wish we did, or these were fundamentally important to keeping food on the table for a lot of people here, but it was not able to be continued. It was not sustainable. The wage subsidies have finished now. That means things have changed again. And then there were tax incentives and so on as well. So, we had our lockdown. And I was saying to Mohit before, he's in a lockdown now, and I'm sure many of you are living in lockdown. Where I live here on this island, this tiny island at the bottom of the planet Earth, we had one lockdown last year for 3 months, and we've had a little bit of change last year, but things have been good from that perspective. However, because of the economy and the industry's changing, these terms like restructuring, refinancing, closures, mothballing, and many more people have been reduced to unemployment as a result of what's happened here. So we've had to do this slide, we're reinventing, we're adapting, we're innovating, and key word, like many of you, we are surviving, and we're just trying to survive. So I'm sure these words resonate and sound familiar to you all. It's not about doing anything but surviving in some spaces. So everyone here started talking about, from the tourism perspective, we started talking about the domestic market, and we started to look at what was going to happen after lockdown. And I want to show you a video now that was built just after our primary lockdown to target the New Zealanders for a domestic marketing campaign. And you'll see the New Zealand humour starting to come through in this as well.
Okay. Yeah, no, that sounds great. All right. Yeah, no, that sounds great. Love you. Who was that? That was New Zealand.
Huh. What do they want?
they want us to help people try new stuff, touristy stuff.
Oh, cool. What did you say?
I said, no worries.
What else did you say?
Oh, I might have promised to do it through song.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Come on, Aotearoa. Do something you've never done before. There's a place to explore.
Spoiler alert, it's that place she said before.
Oh, it's Aotearoa. Do something new, New Zealand. Hit the road this weekend. Visit that giant carrot, if that's your new thing.
Or climb a mountain and drink a Riesling.
Go see the globes and hit a cafe.
Shuck a bluff oyster and swim in a bay.
Jump on a horse and go for a trek.
Or maybe just do something inside, like go to a museum or a gallery.
Or visit the giant LMP bottle.
What is it with you and these giant things? How do they do it?
Oh, do something new, New Zealand. Bypass the badge this weekend.
Walk that scenic trail to see where it ends.
Go for a spin or find a new friend. Pull up a hangy, then blow off some steam.
Go for a bike ride and eat an ice cream.
Walk down the river and stare at the stars. Give this a go.
Try this or go here.
Blow this guy a kiss.
Have you heard about here?
If you normally go north, fly south, drive east.
Go west. Why don't we just stay here and have fish and chips? Hey!
Crayfish.
Cheers!
No worries.
Whoa. Do something new, New Zealand. Take the lead this weekend. Change it up, it'll be exhilarating. Come on, New Zealand. What you waiting?
Wow, that was something new, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
You're on mute, Zane. You have to unmute yourself.
Got it. Thanks, Mohit. I'm back unmuted. So that campaign was really classic humorous approach to getting us here in New Zealand to move, to get off our bums and to go on holiday on the weekend and go and do something new. And that catchphrase, that do something new, New Zealand, has been a really important way for us to help some of our tourism operators and help some of our tourism regions. And as a result, Tourism New Zealand, they have formulated a marketing strategy to get us out there. But it doesn't mean that everything was good and everything worked and it looks great and it's really funny, and it is great that it happened, and it is funny and we do laugh at it, but it doesn't mean that it solved any of the problems. We're still having huge issues as a result. So this slide, for instance, showcases a community that was 99% reliant on tourism and international tourism, and it's glacier and a glacier region within the South Island where I live. And overnight, of course, like many places, they lost all their clients. And now, a year and a half later, it's a ghost town. These two villages actually are ghost towns. They're requiring more and more input from the government and asking for more help to be able to survive. And so therein the question lies, how much money do you give to the industry that may not be here in 5 years or may not be back for 5 years or 2 years? We just don't know how much time this is going to take. So this particular region really suffered, and it's also a region that's being affected by climate change because the glaciers are also receding back into the mountains and getting more difficult to see, which means that it's getting more expensive to see them because the majority of the best experiences we get up there are flying in helicopters to see them from the sky or landing on the ice and the glacier with our guides and walking around. It's quite expensive. So this is not priced for the New Zealand domestic market. The New Zealand people were not equipped to take their family of 5, 2 adults and 3 children, to they just didn't have that budget. So what we've noticed is a lot of tourism regions and operators have had to change their pricing. They've had to change their product according to this new market, which is us, which don't want to pay full price, because it should be, there's all these different feelings that people have, or they just can't afford it. So the tourism markets, the domestic market is great, but it hasn't been a solution for all of these places. Queenstown, seen as the adventure capital of New Zealand, is facing viability issues. A lot of businesses down there are completely non-viable without the international tourists. There's this is a really interesting story that happened as well, and it's the surge of the domestic market. Going out and about, it's great. We're all going on holiday on the weekends, but one of the things that we are doing is we're taking our dogs with us, and so we've got a lot of really sensitive conservation land and a lot of sensitive species here. So taking dogs into the wilderness is not a good thing. So where I live, this story here, New Zealand tourists welcome in the wilderness, dogs not so much, is a story that's quite close to my heart, because it's quite close to where I live. And with this here, we're seeing an increase with New Zealanders taking dogs into these places, and they like to say it's our right as locals, it's our right as New Zealanders to be able to go on holiday like this, and we want to take our dogs, but in some places that we just can't, because the impact on the native wildlife is just too much. So we're looking at domestic tourism in a different way from this perspective. This little lens is like, and I did it myself recently, where myself and my girlfriend, we were going to go on a trip, and we needed to work out, this was just like a day mission. Where should we take the dogs? And so I put into Google search dog-friendly walks in the region, and there was really nothing coming up. You have to, and everyone here is trying to work out and identify where these places are to go on holiday with your dog. And when you go on an international trip, you don't take your dog. So we're learning as we go here. So we've been reinventing, we've been adapting, we've been surviving. And I want to show you this story that I've really enjoyed. And this is only a recent story. Okay, so in January of this year, this story broke here in New Zealand about this couple who had an eco lodge, very beautiful eco lodge in a very, very beautiful location here on the South Island. And look, 99%, you can see in the highlights down here, 99% of our guests were international visitors, says Fran, who owns the Split Apple Lodge and Spa business. Now, as a result, their business just was destroyed overnight. And they'd spent 4 years building the business up. And these people are from Europe, and they've moved to New Zealand. They've brought all their money and brought their children and invested heavily in this new life here in New Zealand. But they were faced with an economic disaster, total disaster for themselves. So they decided to start building tiny homes. And I'm not sure if some of you may or may not be familiar with tiny homes. It's a bit of a trend that's happening here in New Zealand and other parts of the world, where smaller houses and more mobile houses are being built with less of an impact on the environment, usually more sustainable products. The timbers and the fabrication system is often more environmentally friendly and sustainable. Now, this couple here, you can see the type of tiny homes they're building, very beautifully architecturally designed and lovely. And this story broke on national TV. It got a lot of time on the radio and on the news media, online newspapers and so on, and they're saying now it's gone ballistic. They sold their first one 3 days after they'd finished building it, and then immediately they got 90 viewings. They sold 13 more tiny homes by mid-April, and people were starting to buy these all over New Zealand. And at this point, they had no more tourism business. That they've gone from being an eco lodge to being a designing and building tiny homes. So the story's been continuing, even right into last week. So, for instance, last week, the Hills mayors had since recalculated. Now they've estimated that they could sell and deliver 30 to 40 homes a year. And they've had to quickly ramp up their production to accommodate the expected increase in demand. And by doing that, they've employed, they're up to 30 staff members. That's full-time staff as well as contractors. So that's a really big story for an area also that's been heavily hit by the tourism change, and it's an ecotourism destination. And that is the Arbor Tasman National Park here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So that's kind of a nice story where these people have taken this absolutely devastating scenario and they've made it a bit of a, they've woven the old wheat or the grass into gold. And what was that? Rumpelstiltskin, I think. Straw into gold. So that's great. So here's another story that we're talking about, and it's called Jobs for Nature. Jobs for Nature. So this has been a Department of Conservation initiative with the government, and it's all about pumping some of this economic development money that has come post-COVID into nature-based employment and creating jobs for people that have lost their jobs in other industries, like the tourism industry, for instance. So there's a lot of people now having the opportunity to take part in conservation projects, nature projects. So the funding is helping projects to create temporary jobs on private and public conservation land. And the project partners, like councils, private companies, trusts, communities, are creating the jobs on private land and public conservation land. And these will involve and are involving such things as predator control, restoring wetlands, regenerative planting, and improving tracks, huts, and other recreational assets. We have huge predator problems here that I talked about earlier with cats, rats, mice, and stoats. And it's very important that we try to eradicate those. And we've got a movement here in New Zealand where the government's goal and the people of New Zealand's goal is by 2050, we will eradicate all of our terrestrial mammalian predators from our ecosystems, thus giving the birds and the bats and the geckos and the skinks, the lizards, the herpetofauna much stronger opportunities to survive. And it's a hugely important thing. Jobs for nature. So we're seeing a lot of people that would ordinarily be working in offices or and as tourism guides or working in reception at hotels, now working like these people in this photograph in the rainforest or on location, helping to make this country more sustainable for future generations. So it's part of the big package that I talked about, the 1.2 billion COVID response package, and it's all about nature-based employment. Okay, so immediately they gave 200 million to work with the local councils and businesses throughout the country to create the jobs. And it's important to say again here, this is also on public and private as well as private land. Okay, so 154 million is going to ecosystem restoration on public and private land, and 147 million is going directly to the jobs I mentioned before, the pest control and eradication of pest species with our predator-free goals. Here's another kind of feel-good story in a lot of ways. This has come from from the Jobs for Nature program, where there was a whitewater rafting company in a location about 3 hours drive from where I am, that got funding to go into the backcountry locations and do renovations and maintenance on a lot of our backcountry huts and lodges as a part of our hiking system. So, you know, this is fundamentally exactly as Jobs for Nature said it was going to be, and this has become quite a big story. Lots of tourism workers like this. And this story here is just one of many stories like this. There's glacier guides working on fixing trails in the mountains. There's rafting guides fixing huts. There's you know, hotel reception staff working in the forest trapping rats and stoats. We've also got the travel bubble paradigm shift, which is something that everyone has been talking about for a long time. When can we travel? How can we travel? Can we have a travel bubble with Australia, because they're right next door, and they're doing a lot of work as well to safeguard themselves from coronavirus. And so very recently, just a few weeks ago, we opened our quarantine-free travel bubble with Australia, and lots of people got on their computers with their credit cards and started buying tickets to fly to Australia for holidays and fly to New Zealand for holidays from Australia. And immediately those planes, Air New Zealand, Qantas, started flying those routes again. They had to re-employ people that were doing Jobs for Nature, their pilots, because there's pilots doing Jobs for Nature, many people. And then they started to travel again, which led to a whole bunch of new stories. And like the big story that's happening right now, and today I watched the 6 o'clock news just before I started this webinar, and our Trans-Tasman bubble is having issues because in Victoria right now, in Melbourne, they're having a massive lockdown again with some fresh community cases of coronavirus. So our stories in New Zealand are, we've got people trapped in Victoria who were booked on flights to come home and rejoin their jobs and so on, and they can no longer come back. They're trapped over there. So these were inevitable situations in my mind. That this is just was always inevitable. And so what we're seeing is the risk of doing this travel, the risk of taking the trip to Australia because we so desperately want to travel, and you know, or we desperately need to see our friends and family in these places, carries a high risk of not actually being able to return home at the end. So we'll probably see, well, we will see that travel bubble and the people lessening their trips. There'll be less trips as a result of this. And we know that Australian tourism industry has been hurting as well, you know, and Australia and New Zealand are both now offering up a lot of deals and marketing campaigns. We're firing these marketing campaigns at each other. The Cook Islands has just recently opened as of last week. Cook Islands are a hugely big part of our national culture as well. We have a lot of Cook Islanders living here in New Zealand, and our government supports the Cook Islands financially, and a lot of New Zealanders travel regularly to the Cook Islands, and we've been feeling their pain because it's such a beautiful place that was reliant on tourism. So our people feel a sense of brotherhood and sisterhood with those people. So as soon as this travel bubble opened, people rushed to the Cook Islands to spend their money, and we're hoping that can last as well without issues that have happened with Australia. And as you can see here, the tourism operators were anxiously waiting for the visitors from Aotearoa, New Zealand to actually arrive, as were the Kiwis. Were very, very keen to get on planes and fly to this South Pacific island and swim in the beautiful clear water and go snorkeling and go surfing and go whale watching and go fishing and do these things. So there's been a lot of people and a lot of media focused on that. So, you know, these are these stories. You know, this is where we've come from. This is what we've been doing over the last 18 months, and this is kind of where we are. This is where we are today. You know, we're essentially, you know, we're living on the South Pacific archipelago of islands, and we are surviving in our own way. We're trying to make the best out of the hard times, and sometimes we're actually having fun along the way. There's a lot of passionate people here trying to do their very best to survive. There is a lot of issues that we're going through, but we're still trying to have a laugh with it all. And I thought I'd show you this video here, which is another Tourism New Zealand production. And this really showcases a lot of, quite well, the New Zealand humour around social media and its use in tourism marketing. And it's a parody. So, yeah, it's quite a funny look at New Zealand humour. It's an interesting look at New Zealand humour. So we'll have a look at this.
I've been alerted to a situation. It's been happening a lot lately. People have been seeing those photos on social media and are going to great lengths to copy them. I mean, you know them. Hot tub back shot. Man sits quietly on the rock contemplating. Hot dog legs. And the classic one in these parts. The summit spread eagle. Okay, easy does it, sir. Lower those arms, nice and slow. That's it, mate. Oscar Charlie, the eagle has landed. Copy that. Hi, guys. I've seen all this before. Yeah, we all have. But this summer, we're clamping down on anyone travelling under the social influence. Okay? Come on, guys. You've had your fun. Trust me, you're going to absolutely love it. Okay, how about you two? You can consider this a warning, guys. Enjoy the wineries on those bikes. And don't forget to share something new, okay?
We have a suspect travelling under the social influence in the lavender field. Over.
Copy that. What's with lavender? It's the fourth one we've had this week. Go on, guys. Right. Pursuing on foot, officer, pursuing on foot. Please. Hello? Oh, lavender! We've missed them. Fedora. Switch it off. Well, I just had confirmation that the Lavender Loiterers just shared one of the most replicated scenes in all of social media. The follow me, fedora combination. It's just really hard sometimes, you know? Because there are so many great other photos to take besides your usual gram shots, you know? What you need to do is you need to think outside the square, or triangle.
Come in, SOS. We have a hot dog legs in progress at Mustard Point. Over.
Roger.
No, this is David.
So that, yeah, so that there, you know, it's that man is quite a well-known comedian here in New Zealand, and he does a lot of he parodies a lot of our politicians and so on. So, you know, this is classic, you know, humor, really, like taking that idea of social media influencing and really trying to get, they use this as a marketing campaign to get people talking about Instagram and Facebook and other social media platforms, and getting them to post new content, new things, and just using the cliche social images is pretty funny. And sort of that kind of stuff has been, you know, one of the sort of formats of Tourism New Zealand that's been quite successful, much like this song, Do Something New, New Zealand. Those things have taken off, and we've sort of tried our very best to travel in our own country with smiles on our faces, with the money that we have available to us in our pockets, and try to do the best by the people that are in the tourism industry and try to help them to survive. It's been a hard time for a lot of these people, and still is ongoing. And some of these tourism operators will survive in the eco and adventure tourism spaces, and others won't. But one thing we are lucky to have is a government that is supporting us through this, and also one that is fundamentally encouraging us to take part in biodiversity projects in our environment, our conservation initiatives. We're very, very, very lucky to have that. And, you know, where do we go from here? Where to from here? We don't know. You know, we're adapting as we go here. We're making this stuff up, like as I'm sure a lot of people are. So we really have to wait and see what's going to happen. I want to thank you all for attending today, tonight, this morning, whatever your time zone is, and I've really enjoyed putting this presentation together and trying to get the best out of the stories that I could squeeze into a 45 or 50-minute platform. So Mohit, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak today, tonight, this morning, and over back to you, sir. Back to you. So thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you, Zane. It was absolutely wonderful. Your presentation was fantastic, and the sense of hope, and and all that that you prepared in terms of this presentation or what you brought to us is also your creativity. I know you. I know the kind of work you do. And your selection of the right information, the videos that you projected here for the audience, because that's you. So you've been teaching students storytelling for conservation, for ecotourism, for sustainability, and this is the effect of that, really. And how you have also come around in Asian Ecotourism Network to charge everyone with all the good stuff that you've shown is fantastic. Also, there's a huge lesson to be learned here. The lesson for me is that we don't have to forget that tourism is all about adaptability, innovation, and to keep moving forward. Tourism is not to depend only on conditions that will get you money or tourists all the time. You also need to take a step back, which is right now being forced down upon us, to sit back and reflect, where were we going? How are we going to go further? What is it that we have to do? And what are the backups that we have to create? And what are those good things, bad things? Where do we need to draw balances? So this is a fantastic time. And I'm so happy that you brought all this back. I mean, simple things like, rafting people going and, repairing huts. We've got these forest houses strewn about in the Himalayas, all over the place, which were built, 100, 150 years ago by, for various purposes by the British Raj. And we could do things there, right? And then you have other communities participating in different ways to innovate. And this couple bringing up these tiny homes which are on stilts, and they're sustainable in nature. So I think these examples really opened up our minds to go further and to just stop dreaming about what the situation. We'll see wherever we go. It's not everything is in our hands, but what is in our hands is to continue to move forward. and to continue to be hopeful. So your presentation was absolutely an eye-opener. What a lovely country. You know, I know you've been calling me there for a long time now. And as soon as this opens up, I'm just going to collect a few people, or maybe just come all over myself and spend some time with you.
Oh, you're very welcome, and we'd love to host you here.
Fantastic.
Look, it's been such a strange time. You know, I've personally gone through a lot over this last year and a half. It's been very, very difficult. Many of us have. You know, it has not been easy. It's still not easy. But it's heartening to feel that people are doing it together and that they're sharing their stories here, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
I think it's empowering to be able to tell the story as well.
So, you know, one issue, one story that really intrigues me is of Maoris, you know, so talking about how the settlers came in, what happened to people here. I know that they're very spiritually inclined. So there's a lot of story in there as well, you know, so it's a big story. So at some point of time, maybe a month from now, I want you to come back on air with new story or with those stories, and let's tell, you know, our audience about those dimensions as well.
Look, that's a great thought, because the Maori, they have a word called manaakitanga, and they have another word called kaitiakitanga. And you know, kaitiakitanga is about stewardship, and it's about protecting your ecosystem and your landscape, and manaakitanga is about family and about people and bringing people together. And these are antecedent influences that are very, very strong here, and they're words that are becoming very common and very important terminology, vocabulary within our culture for working through this. You know, it would be really nice to be able to start to talk to you and your people about some of that too, and maybe bring some of my colleagues to the table that are of Maori blood, who are these people who could talk much stronger to that story than me. I am of European descent. I am a European New Zealander. You know, my bloodline is English, Scottish, German. My people came to this place for a better life, and that was the gift they gave us. And many of my colleagues and friends and the people that I spend time with are like this. We are of mixed descent. We live in this place. We love this place, and we definitely, you know, I've got a group of people around me that would love to share this place also with you and your people.
That'll be fantastic. So friends, if you've got any questions for Zane, you can type it out. If not, then you'll also get the replay link here, so you can then watch it at leisure with your friends and your family, and show them what New Zealand is all about. Show them their journey through this COVID. But more than that, it's also the videos. And Zane, do I have your permission to share the 3 links with people? So the email which they will get.
Absolutely.
The replay link, I will also put in those 3 links so that they can play them, you know, at leisure when they have time. Yeah. So
look, absolutely. Please share.
Fantastic.
Enjoy.
Thank you, Zane. Thank you, Zane.
Thank you, Mohit. Thank you, everyone.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here. I hope you all enjoyed yourselves. So, you know, how we say in India, it's like taliyan for Zane. Thank you, Zane. Bye-bye.
Thank you.